You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guest about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Ooh, you are in for a treat today. When you have the chance to talk to someone who recently won the CX Evangelist Award, it's guaranteed to be fascinating. Well, prepare to be fascinated because today I get the chance to talk with Aarthi Murali, the Chief Customer Experience Officer at M&T Bank. The Evangelist Award most certainly applies to Aarthi. As I've come to know her over the last several months, I found someone who is both incredibly wise about the right way to create great customer experience, but also incredibly savvy about the way to ensure buy-in, engagement, excitement about CX initiatives across an organization. Through Aarthi's leadership, M&T Bank realized incredible advancements in customer experience and uses that to their advantage in a highly competitive field. I'm eager to learn more about Aarthi's beliefs and approach around CX. Aarthi, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for having me on today.
It is going to be fun. I'm just jazzed about this, but let's jump right into that discussion around the great progress around customer experience at M&T. So much has been done, and I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But beyond that, of course, you're not stopping. Tell me more about what's next for CX at M&T Bank.
Oh, again, Rick, thank you so much for having me on. Last year was a really important foundational step for customer experience at M&T, and we really focused on building some of those core capabilities. We came together as a bank to really put the customer in the middle like we always do, but to apply it more in a holistic and strategic way. The words that I typically use are end-to-end, front to back. And imagine this world where in financial services, we think about how we meet customers the way they want to be met.
Yeah.
And offer and organize the actual organization in a way that the customers want to experience us versus the departments and teams that we might have. And making that a purpose created a wide variety of options for us to bring customer experience to the forefront, which included partnerships with the likes of Qualtrics. It included, launching our own very first mobile app to make sure we have real-time employee feedback directly going into the hands of businesses and subject matter experts, and creating a really closed sense and respond feedback loop, which is incredibly important, as you know, to customer centricity.
I'm curious about that. If I can, that employee feedback aspect, some of the things that I talk about a lot, there's a talk that I give 2020 the year that not everything changed. And one of the things that's a fundamental of customer experience is your front line knows your customer's experience better than you do. So can you tell me a little bit about that employee feedback that you're getting? Is it focused on the employee engagement and experience, which obviously is a fundamental piece of delivery customer experience, but are you also able to get some customer experience nuggets out of that? Talk to me about that employee, because I like what I'm hearing there. That's an intriguing way of going about it with that app.
The concept of employee experience being crucial to customer experience has long been hypothesized, is the word I'm going to use.
Okay.
But I think the pandemic really brought it to the forefront and proved it in a resounding way.
Boy, did it.
And the notion that we went with is, if we don't offer our employees a way to, in the moment, be able to raise their hands and really talk about what's in their way, what's stopping them from providing an amazing experience, how can we remove that friction? Then I believe that we're just not doing our jobs as leaders in connecting those dots that need to be connected. And there's just nothing more important than the employees feeling like they are fully empowered and fully capable of helping customers. And I would also add that, yes, the front lines are amazing and they deal with the customers. They have insights into what we need to change in order to provide those amazing experiences. But our middle and back offices are equally an integral part. And that's where the front to back connectivity comes in.
Okay.
And getting this tool in their hands as well was important for us to get their feedback that allowed us to see all the way from the front office to the middle and the back. Here's how these processes are stitched together or not stitched together, and how we need to radically transform them so everyone is happy in that value chain.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because one of the things in customer experience, right? We talk about, yeah, especially with you and the buy-in stories that you've shared with me and how you've really gotten the whole organization, that front to back that you're describing, involved with customer experience. But you have to start somewhere, and there are organizations that don't traditionally self-identify as being customer facing, right? You hear about audit and finance, they're kind of cliche ones, but there's other organizations as well that would say, look, customer experience isn't for me. I do, heck, facilities, right? I don't even think about the customer. I'm doing headquarters facilities. What does that look like? So going kind of putting back that evangelist hat that you have, how did you drive that buy-in for customer experience in that front to back, in those areas that aren't necessarily customer facing?
That's a great question, Rick. And it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science. And it depends on the day that you decide to be the artist or the scientist. But the magic happens when the two meet together.
Right.
And it's just like employees and customers, shareholders and the communities. And if we were to do that Venn diagram and they all intersect, that's where that magic happens. And there's two parallel approaches that I typically advocate for. And one is, hey, get the real-time pain points out there. Let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be really objective about it, and let's go tackle it and let's go fix them. And that's the faster flywheel. And what it allows is for incredible belief building and proof points where you're just not talking about the concept of customer centricity. You're actually physically implementing it, and you're changing and you're simplifying, and you see the corresponding changes in your scores. The scores are an outcome. They're not the goal by themselves. And
Amen.
by scores, I mean Net Promoter Score or CSAT. And then there's the little bit of a, slightly slower flywheel, which is around the broader journey-led transformation that I'm a huge proponent of. That really is all about looking at, hey, look at the customer's journey in their shoes, put yourself in their shoes. They don't wake up every morning saying, let me figure out how I work with my bank. They do what they do in their lives. And really changing that orientation to fit into their lives and look at all those moments that matter to them and stitch them together. That requires more data, AI, ML, some technology work in there, digital, all that comes into play. And how do you stitch those together? And the two together make an impact. But the last piece that I would say is storytelling, which is very in line with the recognition that we got for the Evangelist Award. How do you tell those stories? How do you connect to the hearts and minds and win hearts and minds along the way, all the way from the C-suite down to every part of the organization? Bringing it to life through the voices of employees and customers is the best.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of storytelling. I'd love to actually explore a little bit more of that storytelling with you, kind of how y'all have gone about that. I've been a part of, this was before my consulting days, but been a part of a company that really focused on the storytelling. And so in an area like home equity, you wouldn't think of that being emotional. And yet there were tears falling down faces, mine included, at town halls as videos were shown of these stories of how a home equity truly impacted people's lives. And it reminded you, if you weren't in a customer facing role, how the business of what you're doing really was for that end customer. How is M&T Bank, how have you brought storytelling to light in the organization?
The cool part about M&T, which I continue to be blown away every single day, I'm completing 2 years with the organization, and the incredible empathy and belief in doing right by customers and communities just shines through every single day. And I believe it's a secret sauce. It's inherent in the DNA of the organization and the people, and that's fantastic. But when we think about it, at the end of the day, we are all humans serving humans. We happen to be doing it through a set of products and services that, we offer, and so do several other institutions, and frankly, so do a lot of startups. Yeah. You can go apply for a loan, on your mobile phone, and you could move that forward. But bringing in that human connection there is so incredibly important. So with that said, with that being in the DNA, there are some very cool things. I believe they're cool. Of course, I'm going to say that, but I think there's some cool things that we've done to really bring that to life and bring it more to the forefront with everything else going on. We know there's a lot going on in the world around us right now. A couple of examples were we hosted a bank-wide event called CX Ignite in summer of last year. Okay. And it was a true celebration of innovation, customer centricity, multidisciplinary teams that came together for a single common cause, like PPP, and bringing that to life.
Yeah.
So, those are examples. We have difference makers videos, which are amazing marketing and communications team puts together that showcases employees and customers working together and how we bring that to life. And maybe a last example is we ended the year on this incredibly positive note, and we hosted this red carpet awards, virtually, of course,
Sure.
in a virtual / hybrid way to bring and recognize exemplary behaviors with customer centricity.
Nice.
And these were awarded by leaders of the bank to leaders and all employees, many employees at the bank, regardless of department. It was all about the behaviors, the beliefs, and the outcomes.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. And there's so much in there. One, you talk, the power of video is stunning, and which is ironic for me to say in an audio only podcast. But the power of video is so important to that storytelling. And then that idea that you're talking about, that red carpet, that celebration of that, so vital. And it reinforces in the employee, hey, this is what the company cares about. Therefore, if I want to care about the same things companies do and be celebrated, I'm going to start doing that. And then, I mean, gosh, Aarthi, you gave me so much in just that little bit, like that human serving humans and that spirit of community and that just that embedded DNA inside of M&T is really beautiful. It does make me think. So M&T, community roots, community banking roots, right? But it's growing. And I know it can be really challenging to balance customer experience, right? If you're one little credit union, it can be really easy to do customer experience and delight the customer. But you want to continue to show up in the community as M&T grows. How do you do that in the community, but then deliver at scale?
That's the question of I think the moment right now. And the good news is that is the question that a lot of other banks are asking, including the larger banks. There's this recognition during the pandemic that, traditional FIs have realized that, hey, we can build amazing capabilities. We can offer incredible digital solutions, but today's world requires a blend of digital human connection. And how do you deliver that with empathy to the communities and be very purpose-led? So I think, yes, it's a challenge for community banks, but I believe all FIs are grappling with that same message. We do it through the leveraging of our secret sauce is the short answer. Given that that's already in our DNA, It's about how do we purposefully create capabilities that support the organization and our customers. And a great example is, the orientation that we did with the launch of our multicultural branches. We have over 118 branches now in our footprint that have been tagged and operate as multicultural branches, which means that they have employees that can speak the language of the people who live in those communities.
Yes.
They can culturally relate to the needs, be sensitive to the environment for them, and show incredible empathy, along with the other cool stuff that we already do, which is, marketing materials in the right languages so everyone has equal access and equity and with access to financial capital, is a small example as we scale, but a great way to apply to directly to the health of the community that we serve.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about what you said there is the multicultural aspect of that, dropping that into those communities and expanding in those communities. You didn't say just language, right? You could print those marketing materials and you have the language A, B, C, D, and E, and F all the way down to Z, right? But you mentioned that having employees that can culturally identify with and be a part of that community and be a part of that culture, that builds, especially in something that stereotypically we think of banking as being sort of sterile, but that's a really beautiful way to make that human to human connection that you're describing. It makes a lot of sense to me why M&T would expand in that way and use that as a way to keep that at scale. I was thinking about, okay, so thinking about multicultural always gets me thinking about travel. And I know that the pandemic created a new language ecosystem, I call it, around the word revenge dining, revenge shopping. And there's revenge travel, right? People have these trips queued up, and it can be hard to get flights. It can be hard to get hotels now because of all the revenge travel. I know you're going stir crazy a bit. What is coming up on your revenge travel list?
Okay, I have to admit, I didn't know this word existed until you and I had this conversation, but I completely identify with the spirit of it.
Yes.
And I'll share a little personal story. So right during the holidays, we had this beautiful decompressed time to focus on the family and the kids are at home. nowhere to go, but we're captured at home. And we spent an inordinate amount of time talking about how we did not travel the past 2 years, how we have been captive. So my husband and I, we went ahead and booked this very long list of travel for this year, which puts us around, I think, all over the country and the world in multiple places, at least 6 to 8 times this year.
Nice.
It's aspirational. I will say it's aspirational, but we're going to try really hard to so we do have a desire to go out west, visit a handful of the national parks.
Oh, yeah.
My kids are at just this age where I think, it's a great time to hang out together and actually give them that experience that they've missed in the past 2 years. But of course, they want to go to Universal Orlando to experience Harry Potter. So that is first on our list, and then the rest to follow.
I'm curious. So where out west, because that does make me chuckle, right? We as parents, we love to decompress. The American West and Southwest is probably my favorite part of the U.S. I live in Texas, but I love going out to Arizona and anything Colorado, Nevada, whatever. Where are you heading out there? Because I find that to be some of the most beautiful parts of the country.
Yeah, Southwest is probably the first one that we've already made reservations to.
Okay.
Sedona and to, Arizona, Sedona. And then we'll make our way to Yellowstone eventually. And then we've got Utah on the list there as well. So again, aspirational, but we are going to try really hard to stick to the schedule.
Aarthi, little change of pace here. Now, with that kind of travel demand, I've got to imagine that you are going to be seeking the first class lounge. In fact, you might say to the kids, hey, y'all sit outside there, but my husband and I, we're going to go sit in the first class lounge and relax. You put your headphones on and we'll be out here in a little bit. But join me today in the first class lounge. We will move quickly here and hopefully have some fun. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Muscat, Oman.
Really?
Yes.
Ooh, tell me more about that. That's a first.
I lived there briefly, but incredibly briefly when I was a child. And I found that to be the most beautiful, beautiful locale with incredible weather and very hilly, very mountainous terrain and an incredible opportunity to do a lot of outdoor activities. Springs deep in the hills and just the mountain climbing opportunities. It was just one of the most rugged but scenic places that I had been.
Wow. I have not had a guest mention Oman yet, and that's what a great description of it. So now you've just added that to a dream travel location that I've not been to yet. But for you, what is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
I'm going to say Belize.
Okay.
It doesn't sound too far away. It should be doable, but again, in our aspiration to travel, it's on my list. Again, given my kids choose Universal every time, I have to fight to get this added to the travel agenda. But I'd love to go and visit the Mayan ruins. I've read a lot about it, and I have an incredible curiosity and to go and experience and step back in the past for a second and see what that was like, and just imagine what that would have been like hundreds of years back.
That's going to be really neat. So I mentioned I live in Texas, and that's just a 2-hour flight from us. And yet I've not been to Belize yet, but I've had several of my friends and colleagues have gone and have spoken very fondly of exactly what you described, getting into the Mayan culture. The diving is very good there. So definitely a place that it's almost kind of a shame that I haven't been there. Been to Mexico several times, but I need to get a little further down the Yucatan Peninsula and head over to Belize. Travel and food go hand in hand. What is a favorite thing to eat?
This is hard for me to answer because I am not a picky eater. I was very picky when I was young. I gave my parents a really hard time. I enjoy food, period. But I think for today, maybe I'll choose some Thai green curry as one of my top favorites.
Yum. Ooh, you just set my lunch plans for today. Good. Thanks, Aarthi. You know what I want a guest to say sometime? What's your favorite food? And for them to say what you just said, food, and just all of the above. So you mentioned being difficult to your parents. What's a thing your parents forced you to eat but you hated as a kid?
All my vegetables.
All of them.
All my vegetables, bar none.
I hear that a lot. What is one travel item, not including your phone, of course, that you will not leave home without?
I really don't have anything. I think it's just my phone.
You are a very flexible traveler. There you go. You're just going to go with whatever it takes. I like that. Thinking back to that idea of customer experience and advancing customer experience in an organization, it can be a challenge, right? Those of us in the CX community, right, we believe in it and have a spirit for it. But I know that you've said, look, I'm going to take a bet that solving for what customers want will contribute to the value of the organization. How does this relate to that oft discussed ROI of CX discussion?
That's a really great topic. It's a favorite topic of
Yeah.
mine. When I say, and I frequently say, customer value equals business value equals organizational value.
Mm.
I come from a place of belief, but I also come from a place of having observed success in the global experience economy. There are plenty of organizations out there with diversity of industry that have proven that thinking about and really putting customers at the forefront, and at the end of the day, offering them products and services that customers really want in the
Right.
way they want it, in the moment that they want, is always good for business. How could that possibly not be a great thing? But what can happen is it's easier maybe to incorporate and implement that in a newer organization that's a startup or a particular niche service. If you look at the subscription models that are out there, be it for music, be it for food delivery,
Hmm.
groceries, subscriptions for healthcare boxes. I mean, there's dime a dozen out there. They all cater to very specific needs that they believe that they're addressing for certain segments of customers out there. Financial and services industry has been around for a couple of centuries.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think there is a belief that this is a must-have for everyone, and so there is a certain rigidity in some of the industries where this might have been around for a long time, and it takes some soaking in to get it in there. But I think all banks, thanks to the external influences and watching their own customers grow,
Hmm.
are coming more and more to the realization that it's, customer experience and centricity is not just a nice thing to have. It's great for shareholder value. It's great for, your revenue, and it's great for market share, and also showing up as a brand
Yeah.
that's meaningful, which is also more important now than ever.
So you and I both know Nic Zeisler, and he talks about that a lot. He actually has this wonderfully contrarian point that we should never talk about the ROI of CX, because whoever talks about the ROI of HR or the ROI of finance, right, those are embedded in the organization. His argument is one, and he talks about that brand promise. And you sort of got there right there at the end of talking about that brand promise as just a fundamental expectation. And you're right, banking, if you look traditionally, it would not be somewhere that necessarily banks and the financial services industry in general would be known for. But that external look has really started to draw that. Are you drawing ideas from outside of I imagine you are, the financial services industry? Is that an important part of your thought process, is how you go into developing great customer experiences?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the world is a very small stage right now, and it's imperative to look at industries to the left, right, and center. And because those same customers of ours are having experiences with those other industries, be it personal, healthcare. Oh my gosh, look at the wearables industry.
Yeah.
You could buy an Aura ring, which tells you your blood pressure, your heart rate, your everything. And then you've got the Apple Watch, you've got Fitbit, you've got Garmin, you've got such a crowded space right there, and they're all fighting for a piece of it. But what that says is that customers are really looking for real-time feedback, and they enjoy it. And then they show up in a bank branch with that same expectation. So how do we show up? How do we show up with that little slice of their day in the middle of all that? And I think that's key. I do want to comment on your question, or the comment that you made around, do you talk about the value of ROI? Do you even justify it? And I think that's a fine line, right?
Yeah.
To me, it's a blend of, yes, to the extent that it makes sense in the context of moving us forward, but at some point it becomes a question of belief.
Yeah.
When you start getting into individual net promoters, and I say this on behalf of all my peer CX practitioners, is when you say this about, hey, let's talk about the ROI of every point increase in net promoter score. That's not a winning argument. Like
Right.
that's a question of belief. But if you're talking about, hey, let's digitize these platforms and acquire 20% or retain 20%
Mhm.
more customers because that's a better experience. Now that's a real investment conversation you can have. So that's how I distinguish those two.
Great. I love how you've parsed that because and in fact, because of that exact point, Nick and I have actually created a videos, a LinkedIn Live series where we argue with each other on purpose. So we've set up this sort of conflict, purposeful series of conversations we call they're CX conversations we call them. It's really more just arguing, but it's a lot of fun. But exactly that. I am not convinced that the ROI discussion it can't. Let me say this differently. I am not convinced that the ROI discussion is in our past. It is still a very important part of our present, but your parsing of it there is so clear as to nits and gnats of, okay, it went up by 3 points. Look at all the revenue. No, you're going to lose that argument. But the macro items, so good. Let's go back to evangelism because I think that's an important part of this, right? You talked about belief and buy-in and the like. And it's challenging enough to do that with one company, inside of one company's culture and move them forward. But you're right in the middle of a merger with another organization. So I can't even imagine how one approaches the evangelism of customer experience, blending two corporate cultures and maybe even two different approaches to the customer. How are you going about that?
That's a great question. And the good news for us is it was made really easy for both the organizations because at the heart of it, People's United, which is the organization that we're talking about here in context of this merger, the reason I believe that this will be such an amazingly successful integration between Peoples and M&T is that there is a very common shared belief on caring and empathy for the customers. The culture of the organization at Peoples is so eerily similar to M&T
Nice.
that it brings a lot of joy to folks that we are truly all we're doing is expanding and welcoming our employees and customers from Peoples versus the word integration sounds like a hard push into an organization. And instead, this has really become a very much a unifying conversation of how do we now together show up for these markets that we're expanding into. And so I do think that that's an incredibly unique opportunity that M&T has and having found this soulmate, for lack of a better word, in
Ooh, nice.
Peoples as we come together.
I wonder if that may be the title of the episode. I haven't decided yet, but the one with the corporate soulmate. I doubt it, but and that's interesting. I imagine that companies have gone through this many times before, and to have found the customer experience soulmate is wonderful and has probably made that a more delightful path. But I imagine that there have been situations, and it's not necessarily in your experience with M&T Bank, but having to go through that where there is that contrarian approach, or maybe just not the same emphasis on customer centricity. And I imagine it goes back to the spirit of that evangelism that you were describing from the very beginning and bringing buy-in and storytelling and everything that goes into that. There's a question that is sitting in my mind, and it's something you've said to me many, many moons ago. And it's kind of related to that other industry conversation we just had. But you said M&T, you want M&T to be the Wegmans of banking. What does that mean? It's intriguing. Tell me more about that.
Definitely. And I cannot take credit for that. That particular phrase was coined by our chairman and CEO, Renee Jones.
Okay.
And what is really beautiful about that is Renee started this inspiring conversation, hosted an inspiring conversation that really talked about what does it mean to have fan crazy, inspiring experiences that we offer to communities. And the immediate thought that came about was Wegmans. So for your listeners who don't know, Wegmans is an incredibly authentic, customer-centric grocery chain, if you will, in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
And they are very well known for being very unique with their quality of products, but also the incredible out of the way care that they do for their customers. And so the customers who go to Wegmans are not, looking for, or maybe a better way to say it would be have a very high bar of expectation walking into Wegmans. And Wegmans really distinguishes itself from other places. The other cool thing about Wegmans is people in communities sign petitions and they send it to Wegmans and say, open a Wegmans in my city.
Really?
And there is no Wegmans in the entire state.
Yeah.
So Wegmans has this, their brand precedes them, the reputation precedes them, their authenticity and the impact that they have in the community precedes them, and then they show up. Mm-hmm. And continue to fulfill that brand promise. So when you think about a bank in that context, I think, and I believe that we have that opportunity at M&T to be exactly that. And the reality is we are that already in many communities that we serve in. So how do we do that at scale?
Yeah.
How do we do that effectively for all of the customers that we serve in across our footprint? And we believe that there is a good opportunity for us to show up in that way.
Gosh, and what an inspiration, right, to use that. In Texas, we have a grocery chain called H-E-B that it reminds me of the fanatic nature of its supporters reminds me of what you're describing as Wegmans. So I can totally see that. And it would be fascinating to be a part of a bank that has that as the aspiration, that people are writing petitions to M&T corporate saying, please come to my community because you are such an amazing brand and we want you to deliver your brand promise here. Aarthi, what a great conversation around customer experience. You've taught me so much. Every time I talk to you, I always learn a little bit more. It's certainly a delight just talking with you, but the idea of the human to human, the community at scale, how we merge companies. I love the I love the corporate soulmate, and then certainly the aspiration of Wegmans of banking. What a brilliant North Star to have. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk here on CX Passport. It's been a delight having you on the show. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, Aarthi.
Thank you again for having me, Rick. This was a fantastic opportunity to share some of my experiences, and thank you again.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX4CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX4CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer, every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.